Be sure to subscribe for more content.
What is up, ladies and gents? Welcome to the BigBC Finance Channel, and I hope you're having a very lovely day. So in today's video, we're going to be talking all about Luna Classic, what has happened to it recently, and where we predict the price to go to throughout the course of the day, as well as some key events that we are looking out for. So be sure to stay tuned for all of that. And of course, if you appreciate the daily analysis on this channel and you're one of the 86% of people that watch my videos that are not yet subscribed, be sure to hit the subscribe button if you like this content. So without further ado, let's get the annotations here back on the screen and let's just talk about what we are seeing first. And then we're going to move on to the price prediction and the events later on. So of course, we've seen quite a bit of volatility here on Luna Classic over the past several days. It started off with Sam Bankman-Fried getting arrested in this region here, followed by Binance FUD. Basically, there was a news article going out about Binance about how they were under investigation for fraud, and so there had been a lot of news throughout the past few days, and the markets have been quite mixed about it. And most recently, we had that inflation rate data come out yesterday. Of course, if you were watching that live, you would have seen the markets react to it, and it was quite a euphoric moment because we saw an interest rate hike of 7.1% instead of the projected 7.3%, and that is extremely bullish, because it came in cooler than expected, meaning that inflation has definitely peaked and the economy has a higher chance of going back to normal in the nearer future. So great stuff on that front. Of course, if I show you the S&P first and foremost, we saw an increase of 2.8% here on the S&P from when the inflation rate came out. On Bitcoin, that same pump on here was about 5%, so we can measure it here, and it was about a 5.2% pump on Bitcoin from when the inflation rate came out. And on Luna Classic, we saw this pump here that took the prices yesterday from around down here all the way to this very top, which was about a 4% pump, so slightly less than I had anticipated, but nonetheless we did see this 4% in the upwards direction. Of course, one thing that we did also notice as well is that Bitcoin started pumping first of all the cryptocurrencies, followed by ETH, and then followed by altcoins such as Luna Classic. So Bitcoin is actually quite a good gauge for whether we are bullish or bearish from some economic data. And if it's bullish, if Bitcoin is heading in an upwards direction, chances are we're going to have a chance to jump into Luna Classic before it has the time to react as well. So that is one thing I have been observing. Of course, this 4% pump wasn't really enough to be any sort of trades on Luna Classic. I was a little bit disappointed. I was expecting nearer 17.4, 17.5 cents from the same economic data, but nonetheless, we've broken through this downwards trend line once again. We're kind of consolidating above it now, so that's good stuff. But in terms of this 100-hour moving average, our kind of determinant of trends on Luna Classic, we are sitting still below it. Of course, if prices stay above, then generally we're heading in some sort of upwards direction like this. However, if prices are constantly below it, then we're kind of still in some sort of bearish trend, and that's where I believe we are at the moment. Unfortunately, the trend is still bearish despite good inflation data, and at the moment we're heading quite close to our purple line down here. Once again, this lifetime support on Luna Classic, which if I just show you briefly, has held the price up since Luna Classic's inception. Every time the prices come down to this purple line, prices have bounced up in the upwards direction. So it would be a massive event if prices went below this purple support line here and continued to go down, because I don't think there's going to be much support for Luna Classic until we get down to around 13.5 cents down here. So definitely something to keep your eyes on, particularly if the prices get closer to this purple line here. I don't mean, and if these prices break below it, what I mean by that is they really do get comfortable with being down there. So if they start doing something like this, for example, if the prices just shoot down very briefly but then come up within the same hour, for example, then that doesn't really count. But what I'd be looking for are prices to just chill and spend a lot of time underneath this area, which would be extremely bullish in my opinion, and that's when that 13.6 cents price target kicks in. But for now, we're still above, and I do think for the next few hours, we're going to see prices just kind of move in some sort of sideways direction. Not too much volatility up until the interest rate decision that comes out at 7 p.m. UTC. That's going to be a very big event. That's going to cause a lot of volatility in the markets, in my opinion. So we could see prices doing something like this, basically to the effect of what we've seen over here, for example. So we could see prices go up extremely quickly, and we see long wicks taking the price up to some sort of price target before coming back down. And of course I do think this interest rate decision has the power to kickstart some sort of bull market rally in Luna Classic. So we could be heading in an upwards direction if everything looks good on that front, but if things look bearish, then we could it could also plunge the prices below our lifetime support here on Luna Classic. Now, so talking about that, basically, if you don't know how to look for it, just go onto tradingeconomics.com. This is kind of the place I go to look out for the economic indicators as they come out. And basically what you'll see here is, if you go on the calendar tab, you'll see, and you go on this free start impact here, you'll see straight away today at 8 p.m. my time, so 7 p.m. UTC, we get Fed interest rate decision coming out at 8 p.m. We've got the economic projections coming out at the same time, and we've got a press conference half an hour later, and all three of them are going to be super important. So obviously interest rate decision first, and you'll see that we've got a previous number at 4% and a consensus at 4.5% here. We don't have to look at the forecast, but the consensus is 4.5%. Now, this is what is to be expected from this. So if actual is 4.5% as well, then it's right on projections for the interest rate decision. And if this number comes in at 4.5%, that is what everyone is expecting. So if everyone is expecting that, it's kind of hard to predict if the markets will jump or dump on the news. But I do believe that it's probably going to do both. I don't know which direction it's going to head in first, but we're going to see the candle, the 1 hour candle, kind of looking like this, going up and down like a yo-yo. But ultimately that should be fairly good news, because a 0.5% increase is the first time they've slowed down the interest rate hikes in 6 months. So my prediction is that the markets will be very volatile, but they should end up higher if it is 4.5%. But where it gets really interesting is if the actual number here is different from the consensus. If we see 4.75%, for example, that could be extremely bearish here, and that is pretty much a confirmed sell for any cryptocurrency that you hold. If the interest rate comes in at 4.75%, that is higher than the consensus, and that shows that interest rate hikes are not slowing down whatsoever. That's a very bearish sign for the economy, and prices on here should head down. Now, the chances of a 0.75% increase on the interest rate is super low, but nonetheless, if it does happen, you know what to do. Just literally get out of the markets as prices plunge down here. Of course, the same goes for the other way. So if this number here is 4.25% instead of 4.5, so we see a 0.25% hike instead of a 0.5% hike, that means the Fed see the risk to the economy as a lot lower, and therefore that is extremely bullish for Luna Classic price. We should see prices head in a massively upwards direction if that is the case. So just a few things to look out for. Basically, there's only 3 numbers that there could be: 4.5%, 4.75%, and 4.25% there. And it's 4.75 and 4.25, which will be the most interesting ones for this outcome for the markets. The second thing that we got coming out at the exact same time are the economic projections. So basically what this is what it says on the tin. Every month the Fed put out these economic projections, and so we get numbers for what they think the interest rate is going to be in 2023, 2024, unemployment rate, inflation, etc., etc. And basically what we want to see with these economic projections is if they're better or worse than the November's projections. So let's say back in November, the Fed predicted that inflation in 2023 was going to average 4%, and all of a sudden in this economic projection in December, the Fed think now the inflation in 2023 on average is going to be 5%. Then that is more than the November's projection, and that is a bearish sign that the Fed predicting the economy is going to be worse than they did back in November. And so that would be a very bearish sign. Markets will probably plunge down if that were to happen. And again, the opposite is true. So if they now project that the economy is going to do better than they did in November, then that is a bullish sign here on Luna Classic, and prices are probably going to head upwards. So this is another thing to be looking out for, coming out at exactly the same time as the interest rate decision. So basically it's all going to come in at once, and hence the volatility in the markets. Now, half an hour later as well, what we have is the Fed press conference, and this will probably move the markets quite a lot because you get to hear Jerome Powell speak, and basically his tone of speaking will kind of dictate whether he's bullish or bearish on the economy. So if he's using language like if he's using language that kind of suggests that the Fed will probably have to continue raising rates in the longer term, so if he uses negative words, if he uses words like hawkish a lot, then that is probably going to plunge the price here on Luna Classic. Again, if he sounds optimistic, if he sounds bright, and he's using words like dovish, he's using words like we can end our tightening policy sooner than expected and stuff like that, then that's going to move the markets in the upwards direction. So those 3 key pieces of data coming out today is going to be super important to what the price does. And so if we go to November the 1st here, the last time the Fed raised interest rates, we can see that Luna Classic did this massive 15% drop here in the space of just 1 hour. We're on the 1 hour chart, and this is a single candle. Now what's crazy as well is that the prices actually closed out that hour at just a 6% drop. So within the space of an hour, prices came down all the way down here and pumped back up to about here. And this interest rate hike was 0.75%. So this was straight on the consensus, which is crazy. And additionally to that as well, what we've also seen is that last time the Fed had a press conference, which was the end of November, they said that they were going to be lowering interest rate hikes. So very bullish news, since they thought the economy was going to do better in the nearer term. And of course, from that press conference that we saw from the Fed, we saw prices soon after on Luna Classic do ultimately a 20% pump the following day. So literally the day after that Fed press conference came out, we saw this quick little pump, a little bit of a retracement, and the prices on Luna Classic went up ultimately 20% before going back down. And of course, in this instance as well, if we just have a look at this candle here, you can see again prices came up very steep and came back down very quickly as well. So this is what I'm predicting we're going to be seeing when the interest rate decision comes out. We're going to see candles with a body but a long wick going in an upwards direction, and probably one going in a downwards direction as well if everything comes out as expected. So those are really kind of my thoughts here. Of course, on Bitcoin as well, we're going to be watching what that does, because that's going to be a good sentiment indicator. If Bitcoin starts to head up, then the chances are Luna Classic will probably start catching up with Bitcoin as well, and that would be a good way to gauge where Luna Classic is going to go in the future. And with Bitcoin at the moment, I do think it has a good opportunity to go much more in an upwards direction like this. Of course, we have one more resistance on Bitcoin at the moment that's kind of sitting at this line here. So this is like the upper resistance of the post FTX crash there, 18,500. If Bitcoin can break through that with the interest rate decision news, then it could start some new bullish trend up until around like 20,000. Have a look at the price here. It shoots down, so there shouldn't be much resistance above 18,500 on Bitcoin. So I'm watching what Bitcoin does as well, how it reacts to the interest rate decision. If it gets above 18,500 and finds good ground above here, for example like this, where it continues to head like this, then that's going to be very, very bullish for Luna Classic as well, because of course whatever Bitcoin does will have a bias on what Luna Classic does. So if Bitcoin is bullish, so will Luna Classic. And so ultimately, for the next few hours, I don't think too much will be happening here, but at 7 p.m. UTC, I'll be watching that economic data come out, the interest rate decision, the economic projections, and half an hour later I'll be listening to the Fed press conference, because that will determine where the prices go here on Luna Classic. If prices do start heading down from that interest rate decision, then I think it's going to penetrate this lifetime support, and if it does, then it's probably going to plunge the prices. It's probably going to do this to the price where we start seeing this downtrend once again, and ultimately price target being at that 13.5 cents there. Of course, the silver lining to it is that we get to buy Luna Classic at cheaper prices, and if you believe in the long-term prospects of Luna Classic, then that's always a good thing. However, if we see prices pump in the upwards direction, then I'd expect a good resistance at this level here on Luna Classic at the 17.8 cents region. Of course, if Bitcoin's able to penetrate 18,500, I do think it could start heading towards 20,000. If that is the case, then I would expect Luna Classic to start heading towards this high here at around 19.3 cents. So exciting times ahead, not just for Luna Classic, but for every crypto out there as well. And so that's pretty much all I have to say in this video. Thank you so much for watching. Do let me know in the comments whether you're holding Luna Classic or not. And if you found this video helpful, do be sure to smash the like button and hit subscribe for more content like this. But otherwise, guys, I'll see you in my next video.